You're listening to a Countout Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Stardom Road here on the Count Out Network. I am your host, as always, Scott Edwards, and with me is none other than my good friend and my co-host, as always, Trent Brewer. Trent, how are we on this fine evening?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. You know, when you were talking, like, I always like to come up with something interesting to say at this point. But because we're doing this by fortnightly, and we've been doing it for a bit, I feel like the kind of things I would normally say in like an occasional podcast appearance, I've already used. So I'm running out of material. So all I can say is good, and then use material talking about how I have no material.
I mean, hey, you could have had something in the chamber there. You know, I think we have enough jokes with them one another that you could have probably like ripped me a new one, but it's
I'm
fine.
firing blanks today. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. But this is another important episode. Of course, this is the third and final edition of our Hana Kimura series. This will be talking about some of her biggest and most important matches. We are talking three from three stages of her career, really, or three important ones, highlighting important moments in her career as well. Thank you everyone that has listened so far to this series. I know from what I've been told, this is our most watched episodes, and that doesn't come as a shock to either me or Trent, but it does mean a lot, and it means we're doing the right thing, because that's why we're doing these episodes, because I think everyone should know about the greatness of Hana Kimura and all that she stood for.
Yeah, look, it's always a little bit difficult when it comes around to Hana Kimura season, I guess. But there is so much still to talk about, and whether it's someone coming to Hana for the first time or people who were there from the beginning or anywhere in between, you know, it's a good chance to relive the good things, the happy memories and the exciting matches and who she was as a person and a wrestler. So even if we're just doing that once a year, like, it's still something special.
Yeah, and my eyes killing me. But allergies. It's allergies. It's Hana Kimura season and allergy season.
Yeah, that's it. Blame the crying on the allergies.
Exactly. It works out for me.
Yeah. I was chopping onions while watching these matches.
But the fun of today's episode is we will be talking about, like I said, the matches, and then we will talk about the pinx show, of course, that happened last week. This time, if you're listening many months in the future, then happened a week ago in the time we're recording.
Welcome to our timeline.
Yeah, but we talked about the other memorial shows on the last episode, so I wanted to make sure we hit that one here on this show. And then we'll close out the show talking about the legacy of Hana Kimura. So let's get into it with a little bit of 5-star Grand Prix action. 2017, it was Kagetsu versus Hana Kimura. I think many will agree this, if not Hana's best match, one of the best matches in Stardom's history, at the very least. It is an important one for her growth as a professional wrestler. It is on Stardom World for those who may want to check it out if they haven't. I'm sure a lot of people have, but if you're a new fan, perhaps maybe you haven't had the chance to go back. Between this one and probably the match with Giulia is the conversation for best Hana Kimura matches. And yeah, this is definitely worth going out of the way for, because there's a story to it that you very quickly can learn as long as you watch the pre-match promo, which sets up the whole thing. And by the end of the match, you walk away saying that was absolutely worth it. I know this is a big match of your fandom. Obviously, you didn't even have to rewatch it. So I'll let you talk a little bit about it.
The beautiful thing about this, and you did sort of mention it there to an extent, with professional wrestling, when you're coming into a match that has a lot of story to it, a lot of backstory, a lot of things surrounding it, you can come in a little bit kind of blind and not pick up everything. but they do a great job of establishing everything you need to know. The connection between Kagetsu and Hana Kimura, the positioning of both of them in terms of the 5-star Grand Prix, the way the match itself unfolds and the aftermath of it, and then, of course, the addition of a new member to the Oedo Tai team that comes through, all in the space of this one match. So, yes, it's a match, and yes, it's a great Hana Kimura match, but more than that, it's just a great, 30 minutes of Stardom history just compiled into this one moment, which gives you everything you need to know about the promotion, the character work, the story development, the twists and turns, and the wrestling as well. And I think that's partly what makes this match so memorable. Is it's not just a wrestling match, it's a wrestling experience. It's kind of like an entire show of WWE Raw or AEW Dynamite just packed into this one little self-contained thing. You get all the story you need, you get all the twists and turns you need, and you get the emotional highs, emotional lows, and kind of like a feel-good ending at the end. Even though the story being centered around Hana Kimura and her quest to winning the 5-star Grand Prix, that doesn't happen. She loses this match, but it's still the story it tells leaves you on such a high and just a happy feeling.
And I think this match in a lot of ways does kind of embody the relationship these two had, of course, going in as tag team champions. And the whole premise going into it is, this is going to last 10 seconds, we'll get out of here. It was the main event of the night.
They hang out in the same side of the ring holding hands. They get introduced together. They're playing this up in such a campy way. It's Oedo Tai, so you kind of are expecting, even if you don't look at how long this clip goes for on Stardom World, which kind of gives away that you're not getting a 10-second match. But you are you're watching it going, this feels like Oedo Tai tactics coming in here.
It really did, and I loved them doing the entrances together, standing on the same side of the ring together. It's just
annoying Daichi together.
This is one of those matches, if you watch live, you'd be like, I mean, they're not gonna, right? But you're just you would have so much fun watching a match like this live, and you have so much fun going back and watching it as is anyways, even if you see that the clip's 28 minutes, not about 5 minutes. And really, once the match gets started and Kagetsu lays in the middle of the ring, it's on. When Kagetsu kicks out, it's oh, here we go.
And the crowd are playing along too.
Oh, yeah.
If the crowd didn't play along, it'd still be good. But they, especially Stardom around this time, I feel perhaps more than any other period, the crowd kind of knows that even if someone's popular, and Oedo Tai this period, they were the most popular people in the company as far as I'm concerned, but they were heels. So it's very easy in that situation for the heels to just get cheered and just be the uber popular people. But the crowd kind of knows when to cheer for them, but then to kind of react shocked and play along with the heelish tactics and stuff. And that's something that I love about, I guess, if you're calling this post-kayfabe wrestling era, where the fans are in on it, but then it becomes a pantomime where the fans are in on it and participating in the story that it's trying to tell.
Now, this match, I think it's not a work ratey type match. It's a wonderful story told of almost challenging Hana to get to that next level. I mean, at the time here, she's still so fresh into wrestling anyways, right? But watching it, and I watched it right before we start recording this, so very fresh in my brain. But watching it, you just saw her gain more and more confidence, even after being bewildered that Kagetsu lied to her earlier in the match. And I think that was the most fun part. And this is something that I'll talk about with all the other matches that we talk about. But there was no one at bringing the instant intensity to matches. Once as it kept going and going, and they're throwing each other through the chairs in the crowd, which is one of my favorite things ever, and I love it. And anytime they do it in Stardom today now, which they're starting to do it a lot more of.
Now that you've got the pandemic restrictions lifted, I think they've kind of got the carte blanche to go back to that, especially Oedo Tai.
And it's just such a nice little love note to the old Oedo Tai that you just love every time. But it felt like every time that Hana got put down by Kagetsu, she got back up stronger and stronger and stronger, and until she had no more in the end, obviously. But that's the beauty of Kagetsu. I could watch Kagetsu wrestle 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because the creativity in the matches and what Kagetsu is work ready if you really want that side, but such a great storyteller. Such a great storyteller, because this match you get comedic moments, obviously, right? With Chris Wolf getting in the ring trying to protect Kagetsu, and Hana drop kicks Chris Wolf into Kagetsu's hanging upside down, or when Kagetsu looks at the camera after drinking the water and like gives a little wink like, hey, you're in this with us, and ends up spraying Daichi instead because Hana knew to duck. Like, it's those little moments that made Kagetsu that much better.
Yeah.
And it was a credit to Hana for being that great already too in this match to match that in a lot of ways. It was a two-person fight for a reason.
Yeah, look, Kagetsu at this point in time is pretty much, if not at the top of her game, she's, within reach of that peak. And you see a lot of signs of the ultimate peak of her through this match, where you're talking about Kagetsu trying to bring out the best in Hana Kimura. That was the story arc, not only of this match, like even including the end when she's on the microphone saying, the reason I didn't let you win is because I want you to earn this. I want you to get to that point where you can be this good, and kind of pushing her to get better. That was the entire story of her red belt run. The whole time people would come and challenge her, step up to her, fall short, and Kagetsu wouldn't necessarily gloat about it. She'd just say to him, get good, get back here, beat me. The whole idea was she wanted to find someone who was ready to take the reins in Stardom, which was eventually Maya Watani. But the moment she lost the belt, and then when she challenged for Maya against Maya and eventually lost, she knew Stardom was in safe hands with Maya, so she could retire. And you see the points here where like it feels like she's trying to make sure Hana's at that level where if she needed to retire, because remember, like, she did try and retire around this time already once before. That Oedo Tai was in safe hands with a wunderkind, someone who had all that potential. And the match is all about drawing that out of Hana Kimura. We know she's good. And at this point in time, this is by far one of her best matches in her career, because she's being pushed to show just how far she's come along since her debut. And you get that through the intensity, you get that through the expression, and you get that through the match itself. Yes, it's not a 5-star technical classic, but between the action in the ring and the storytelling, they really nail everything about as well as they possibly could, given especially Hana's point in her career.
Now, one thing that I think to me stands out is really the end, and it's the kick out at one and the fire up, and Kagetsu just takes her out, ends it once and for all. Like, all right, that's enough. And it's so perfect because it's you have that belief that, oh, maybe this is enough, right? And we see it in a lot of matches today in Stardom where they get that energy burst at the end, and sometimes, a lot of the time, it can lead to them winning. Then Kagetsu is not having any of it. And
they play that off really well, because yes, it happens enough times for them to win, but it happens just as much when they lose. So when you see that kick out of one, that kind of Hulk Hogan fire up, you don't know whether it's like that last gasp before they eventually get put down, or whether they're striving through making that big comeback, which makes it extra exciting.
And I wanna quote this article by James Carlin, who wrote about this match on his Substack. There's something about amazing about watching this match. These two hold a very special chemistry that few others in the ring have together. This was their first singles encounter, starting with a clear sign of things to come, as the two would wrestle each other once again in the distant future. Hana gets onto the mic, admitting that she believed that her best friend will lay down for her naiveness costing her the match. Kagetsu reassures her that he would have never done that even for her, reminding Hana that she's only 20 years old and that when she's finally able to overcome him, it will be a very big moment. Kagetsu, and I quote, said, "When you beat me, it will mean something." And I think that's really the beauty of this match. In the end, is that feeling of truth, obviously, because Kagetsu would go on to have such an important reign as World of Stardom champion when Stardom desperately needed Kagetsu to do so. But at the same time, it's both painful to think about too, because at just 20 years old, and obviously within the next 2 years, she would sadly be gone about 2 years and a month after this. But I could watch this match again and again and again, and it never will get old, because I think you just notice certain things too the more you watch it. You notice the creativity, you notice the slyness of Kagetsu, the growing confidence of Hana, and it makes the match so great, even if it's not to the levels of what we see today in some matches, right? Because you can watch pretty much any Stardom pay-per-view and you're going to get a fantastic match, but not all of them will encompass or embody the incredible story that was told here. And that's just wrestling. That's not just a Stardom thing. That's just wrestling.
And that's something like you do miss if you're not careful about. Stardom, I think, were arguably better at these kind of self-contained story arcs pre-Bushiroad in a lot of ways, because I feel like now they are relying too much on the big title matches and like years and years of history, which for people like us, that's fine, because like we're psychos, we invest in that kind of thing. But if you're not watching inside and outside, you're not following the history, you don't necessarily pick everything up. A match like this, you could show someone who's never seen Kagetsu, never seen Hana Kimura, never watched Stardom. You could show them this match and they can pick up everything they need to know within the space of 30 minutes. Who they are as characters, what their relationship is to each other, what their relation is to the wider tournament that's going on. And the wrestling itself is good enough to back up that storytelling. Is it Utami Shuri? No, but it doesn't need to be. This is a 5-star Grand Prix match. And we've got to also remember, this is back in 2017. Like, you weren't getting the banger after banger after banger like you're getting in modern day Stardom. It was a little bit more stretched out. The roster wasn't as deep. This was like a quality match for this time period, which just then only enhances what they put forth. It still holds up in 2023, but it meant that little bit more back in 2017 because it was unlocking who Hana Kimura was as a wrestler. You saw what she did here, and it's like she's not just a character worker. She does have that ability to go in the ring, and we see that progress through with some of the matches that we will be talking about later today.
Yeah, and I think this match, or this relationship, maybe, if you're looking for something in current day Stardom that embodies that story every time they face off, I would say it would be Mayu and Starlight Kid.
Absolutely.
And that's my favorite. I mean, I watched their match in the 5-star Grand Prix last year at the final night. Had no rhyme or reason had no stakes to it. It was done.
No,
they were both
were knocked out.
But they told just this phenomenal story that night. And it was a continuation of a story. And it's a lot like this. And I think that's kind of why I love matches like these. And it's why we wanted to hit this one first, because it really does tell you who Hana Kimura was and was going to become in the coming years.
It's one of the best examples of Hana Kimura in the Oedo Tai story. Not just in terms of wrestling, but in terms of character, which, that was such an important part of Oedo Tai, was the character and interpersonal relationships. And then when the bell rang, they could go. Like, Kagetsu and Hana had the experience as tag wrestlers, as champions, so they knew each other inside and out. They'd been training together. So it was the perfect kind of match to highlight everything. Sure. But you're absolutely right. The closest connection is Kid and Mayu. That's kind of their stories progress to where Hana and Kagetsu would be at about a year later, when Hana turned on Oedo Tai and Kagetsu specifically. You get that a little bit with the current Mayu and Starlight Kid, but you still see Mayu serving that Kagetsu role, even though she will beat Kid and happily do so. Ultimately, she wants for that one day when Starlight Kid can finally stand there and earn the victory and finally say, I have succeeded. I have exceeded where you are at. That's the ultimate journey for both of them.
It's the best thing Stardom does, in
Mm.
my opinion. It's the best thing that they do. It's not as, like you said, it's not as common now. But if you have paid attention to this promotion long enough, you know where those types of stories are.
Yeah.
With Mayu and Starlight Kid, with others on the show, obviously Giulia and her story, and long-term stories that don't need to all be told in 2 months, right? Stories that
the more you're willing to invest in Stardom, the more you get out of it character-wise and story-wise. And that's part of the reason why we do shows like this and why we write the columns and articles that we do, because we are fortunate enough to have the time and have the energy and have the psychotic nature to want to invest that deeply. And what we hope we can do is then make that story that is hard to access a little bit easier to understand. Through the characters and stuff, break it down in a way where you can be a casual viewer or someone who watches but doesn't have that background to be able to go, I understand now why this has a little bit more impact and a little bit more oomph.
Sure. And now we move from that to Hana Kimura versus Mika Iwata from Sendai Girls.
Sorry, is this Sendai Road? Am I confused here? Is this an offshoot, a spin-off episode?
Part of the conversation here is Hana Kimura, and we wanted to hit one match outside of Stardom because she did have pretty much an entire career outside of Stardom. She was trained outside of Stardom. And this
is a different gimmick too, which I think is very important.
Different gimmick. And this is a year later. This match is not a year later, but like 6 months, 7 months later, which is still a lot of time. I don't care what you say.
Especially at that point in her career. You can make a big leap in 6 months' time, as we've seen with a lot of wrestlers in recent years.
Now, this was the first time I watched this match. And I said, not even halfway through, I said, she has been able to do the personal, intense fight forever. Because this was a personal, intense fight. If you watch Hana and Giulia, you kind of see
hint for what's coming.
You kind of see where that's comes from in this match. And Iwata is just so good. Like, that was one of my things, like, watching this match was like, I almost can't focus on the Hana part because Iwata's piercing this poor woman with kicks. Every kick had intent on it. Hana at one time hit a headbutt that was nasty. Nasty. It was a fight. It wasn't a match. It was a fight. And Iwata ended up winning in the end. But again, you watch this match and you're like, and this is in different character as the cheerleader, not the Oedo type character. It's like, this girl is going to be the biggest babyface in wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, that's the type of takeaway.
We talked about this in the first Hana Kimura episode. Like, at the age she's at this point in time, the fact that she was able to jump between this and the Oedo Tai character, which are completely different, when most wrestlers would be struggling to get one gimmick down, she's got two down perfectly in completely different environments, asking completely different things. You see similarities to say the Kagetsu match in the sense of, like, Hana Kimura is sort of fighting from underneath, but the relationship here is completely different. The focus of the match is completely different. And one thing I do really want to highlight here is, like, this goes for a decent amount of time, so they have time to tell a story in the ring. Up until maybe the last 5 minutes, ironically, when Hana decides to throw the headbutt. Before then, this is a very simple wrestling match in terms of moves and holds that they were doing. This wasn't a case of, like, wowing people with crazy athleticism and hard-hitting, like, strong style fights. This was two wrestlers who went out there and told a compelling match, a compelling story, without needing to over fluff it with grandiose style. This is a very basic match for a lot of it, but they execute everything so well in the story behind it. This would actually be a match I would encourage a lot of up-and-coming wrestlers to watch. because it becomes very easy to see like the top end stuff and think, oh, I've got to do flips and I've got to do this amazing these kind of moves that no one's ever seen before to get myself over and to make a match good. This proves that you don't need to do that. Now, the last 5 minutes really ramps up the intensity. The head kicks, which you wouldn't necessarily maybe encourage everyone to be doing. The headbutts, which I'd encourage nobody to be doing. But up and like that doesn't detract from the previous, say, 12 minutes of proper, good quality wrestling that happened before it. It just enhances it because you're like, now they're kicking the gear. Now they're doing everything they can to win this match.
Yeah. I was talking to someone about Hana last week, and we were talking about the Giulia and Hana match, and it'll come into this as well. And it's that I don't think anyone consistently has that intensity in their matches like Hana did. Like I don't like I sat there and really thought about it. Who has that like level of intensity? That who's that great brawler today? Not even just in like Stardom, but Joshi overall. And I was like, Giulia has it sometimes, but it depends on the opponent.
Yeah, depends on the situation.
Suzu kind of has it, but she's too flashy.
Yeah.
She's a lot flashier than Hana ever was. It's just such a style that obviously comes from Kyoko and was really passed down to Hana to perfection because she put her own level on it, and that you think that comes with her own unique charisma, right? They're both obviously charismatic, but she had her own. And watching this match was like, she just had it forever. She just had it forever. Yeah. It didn't matter the opponent, didn't matter the story. She just had it. And this match was, and I think you perfectly nailed it. This is the type of match you want to show young wrestlers. Like, this is the match you'd want to show like a Hanan right now. Like, hey, big matches. This is how you want to build it, because there's a lot of time here, time that a lot of the young wrestlers don't get. But if they were going to get that opportunity, this is kind of how you could follow it. And sometimes just throwing, forearms and kicks back and forth and doing simple slams and doing submissions. It's the simplest form of wrestling, but it many times can be the best.
A good story in a wrestling match doesn't need flash, it needs substance. Flash can enhance it, absolutely. And you see someone like Suzu, for example, who can execute that as well. But like that's just because of the level she's at in the ring and the confidence in her own abilities that she has. You don't have to do that to tell the kind of story that you're seeing here. And that's what you should be encouraging the wrestlers. Now, Hana was blessed because even if like her wrestling maybe took a little while to become as complete as it did, she had all the hard stuff down pat straight away. This stuff that we're talking about, you don't typically have this down pat in your first year or two in wrestling. It normally takes 3 or 4 or 5 years to become as adept as she was at this point in time. And then everything else just follows from that. You can teach someone how to do a pole driver. You can't necessarily teach someone how to express that kind of emotion and intensity in such an authentic way, in such a believable way. And we see it through here. Mika Iwata is a fantastic opponent to bring that out from Hana Kimura. But you're right, like you could chuck her in random tag matches and she would still execute this kind of intensity. And you don't, as you said, you don't really see that today. And part of that, like, I don't blame Giulia not wanting to go full intensity every single show, because that's a lot of shows to show it off on. And her character herself is very sort of fun and laid back a lot of times as well. But Hana she was able to activate it in that kind of way. And it really does make her stand out in the wrestling scene.
It does. And, I hope a wrestler comes along with this overall package again somewhere down the road, and I'm sure they'll have Hana Kimura as an inspiration when that time does come. It could always be one of the younger wrestlers around that just haven't figured themselves out yet. Obviously, Rina jumps off the map in those terms because
she's very good with the character stuff.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see on that. But let's move over to our third match of the show, which was Hana Kimura versus Hazuki from the 5-Star Grand Prix 2019. This was the match that she needed to win to get to the finals of the 5-star Grand Prix. The night of, that is. She had to win the night of, and she did. She beat Hazuki. And I just talked about personal intensity. These two, maybe Hazuki. That would be the, but she's nice now.
Hazuki, yes. Like when she's in Oedo Tai, I would agree with you, but the current Stars version of her, she's a little bit more laid back, a little bit.
Her big match,
mature.
We get it.
Yeah, big match, absolutely. But like big match, you get the same with Giulia as well. So
yeah, she would be the one because her moveset isn't flashy. I think it's like why
now she stopped trying to do the shooting star press.
Yeah. I think Hazuki would. I actually would probably pick Hazuki over Giulia just because like she has the same like speed going too. Like it's just all out. Like it's just something different. But you saw it here. You saw it in this match. Obviously Hazuki's time in Oedo Tai back then was some of the best work of her career. But this was also Hana at the top of her game, as we talked about last episode in full.
We talked about it last year as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. But as we talked about last episode in full detail, talking about her 5-star Grand Prix, this was the match we were going to come back to. I think if you were looking through this tournament, I think her match with it's either Mayu or Momo maybe might be like the better wrestling match. But these two have the history to build off of, and they have the fact that with a win, one of them could be going to the finals. That helps a lot. And it's just sensational. And it's in Cork and Hall. They never slow down. It's much like the match we see. 2 months later again with Giulia, but this has a different feel to it because of the Oedo Tai ties and their relationship, as we know in detail at this point.
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing about this is it executes the best of both sides. Yeah, you get the best of Hazuki here because Hana can kind of rebound off of that and give it straight back. And both wrestlers really thrived against someone who was willing to dish it out and take it. Yeah, it's not a case of, I can hit you, but be careful with me. Like, if I hit you, I want you to hit me twice as hard. And they kind of bounced off of that. You got the classic Oedo Tai tactics. It went straight from the start of the bell. Of the 4 matches we're looking, this is kind of maybe the best wrestling version of Hana Kimura, because like everything else is kind of showcasing different things. But if you just want to get an idea of how good Hana could be bell to bell, completely, showing off the aggressive side, showing off the technical ability, because it's around this time that Hana Kimura was really making that leap from being a good wrestler who could tell great stories to being a great wrestler who could tell great stories. The 5-star Grand Prix was integral for that. She got the chance to really showcase it. And this was one of the matches that I think people stepped up, and because everyone knew Hana Kimura was getting pushed, whether they thought she was winning the 5-star Grand Prix or not, whether they thought it was going to come at the end of the year or next year or the year after that. You knew, okay, Hana Kimura is one of their main players. She's going to be a big deal. You had confidence after this tournament, especially a match like this, because it's like, I can trust that, put her in the big positions, she's going to deliver.
This was a hell of a night, final night for the tournament, by the way, if you just look at it. I think, when I look at this match, and I think I watched this not fully knowing like Hazuki, outside of them being in Oedo Tai and obviously Hana moving on, their actual history, like personally. Once you learn that, the match just takes on a whole different meaning almost, because and adding the part that Hazuki's out the door very soon, and it's just it's a chance for them to go out there and put on a show to the most intense possible way. And so this is one I didn't rewatch recently because I've watched it a few times. But if you were to look at this match and kind of compare it to the 3 we've talked about, what separates it to make it different?
I think it's because you're getting that complete package with her. Yeah, you're seeing a lot, like you're getting the aggressiveness, but you're also getting more showcasing of the technical side. You're seeing her venture out with some of the moves a bit more, like the finishing sequence. I believe she debuted it in this match, didn't she? The Tiger Lily and the pile driver. That was debuted on this match. Yeah.
Yes.
If not, it was if not this match, it was in the tournament. I know that.
Yeah,
much,
it was definitely in
I'm
the
pretty
tournament.
sure it was this match that kind of she debuted it and the crowd kind of like, oh, like they know, kind of the example of you've still got the hydrangea submission, which is a fantastic submission. But seeing this as kind of that impact finishing combination to really sell it home. It shows the progression because the Oedo Tai Hana Kimura we see, the match against Mika Iwata, she's still at kind of that more basic level of wrestling. What she's doing in the ring is a little bit more grounded.
Yeah.
The Giulia match we're going to cover is just a fight. It's not a wrestling match, it's a fight. You could have put that in any pub in England and it wouldn't feel out of place. This match is the melding of all those styles and a little bit more. You get the fight, you get the basics done perfectly, and then you're getting this exploration and this next step forward as a professional wrestler inside the ring.
Yeah, and it was part of obviously the biggest night of her career, ultimately, right? Going on to win the 5-star against Konami in the main event. But let's get to that match that we've been kind of hinting at the entire show. That, of course, was Hana Kimura versus Giulia. I think this match has gotten a better appreciation for it since after Hana passed. I think more people have appreciated it more, and maybe that also has to do with kind of Giulia growing too, because there's a lot to pack in for this match. Obviously, this is right when Giulia walked in the door. She didn't have a lot of fans. A lot of people were not happy with her, obviously, because of the way she came into Stardom, and she had to try to make herself fit in. And she picked Hana Kimura as that first rival. And I say to this day, without this match, Giulia is never to the level of a wrestler she is now. Like, this is the match that said, okay, Giulia can do all of this. She can go on to be great in Stardom, because this felt like her true welcoming to the company. And it's because of Hana Kimura, and it's because of the intensity that they shared against one another. It's Giulia's first great match in Stardom. Obviously, she's gone on to have countless great matches since then. But it's also that signature match that people think of when it comes to Hana Kimura. It's the match that leads to so many moments, obviously, after her passing that we remember because of how much that meant to Giulia. And I'm not even talking about the match. Like, I'm not even talking about the actual in the match, but when you get into the match, it is 15 minutes, like you said, of a fight. Capital FIGHT. Fight.
I think there's probably 2 or 3 reasons why it's looked upon a little bit better now. The first and most obvious elephant in the room is there was a lot of Giulia backlash around this time, both for her coming in from Ice Ribbon the way she did, and people kind of looking at her as just coming in and usurping a lot of fan favorites, which that issue would take a couple of years, if we're being honest, for people to sort of subside from. And that was still very prevalent at this point in time. So people kind of look at it a little bit like, The second is because like this period for Stardom was just so hot. And the main event of this match was Momo Watani versus Kagetsu in arguably the best match that they've put on against each other. And then you had Arisa Hoshiki versus Konami. Like, this period was just crazy hot. And the third reason, I think maybe the most important looking at this match in terms of Stardom's history as a whole, is this was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
You put this match in at 2023, and it feels like we basically got that with Giulia versus Mayuhiki. That's a very similar match in sort of context and terminology. But at this point, at the end of 2019, we didn't get a lot of this kind of match. Like, you would get the, going into the crowd, the Oedo Tai stuff, slamming people into, pillar to post kind of thing. But it was always kind of done with kind of like a roguish, devilish fun.
Yeah.
There's nothing fun about what they're doing here. Giulia's come in and wants to hurt Hana Kimura. Hana Kimura's looking at this upstart coming in and wants to put her in her place. They're not smiling. They're not laughing. They're not playing to the crowd. It's just like, bitch, I'm going to end you. And for 15 minutes, they do their damnedest to make that happen.
Yeah. So it's funny because I told, so the first time I ever watched this match, I walked away from absolutely blown away. And that, it might have been right around the time she passed. And I remember telling, I've told the story, but I had someone give me a whole list of matches, and this wasn't on there. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna watch it because I liked Giulia very quickly. I did. Like, this was, I saw Giulia before, like right around the time for the first time she won the Wonder, but before I watched her matches before that, I didn't watch her Wonder stuff. And I liked Giulia instantly. I was like, okay, she's got something to her, and a lot of it was because of this match. And I said to the person, I was like, why was this match not on the list? And they're like, it was fine. And I was like, go back and watch it. And they walked away saying, "Oh my god, that was fantastic! What the hell?" And I think I think you're absolutely right. It was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. It really does channel old school Joshi, which is funny because it's ahead of its time, but it's also a flashback, and it's what we see with Giulia a lot in her big title matches is flashbacks, while bringing it forward and making it modern. And when I watch this match, I watch it with a big freaking smile on my face because it's like they had a mission. These two had a mission, and it was to destroy the other, like you said. And they just never stopped. There was no minute. There was like no second where you just like sat there and like, all right, let's get going. You wouldn't even think it was going to a 15-minute draw. If you watched it fresh, had no idea what the result was. They just never gave you a flash of this is going to a draw. You and me talked about Tam and Mina when that match kicked off. We're like, they're going kind of pretty hard for a 30-minute draw. Obviously, they ended up having a 30-minute draw, but that's what this match was like. They just went hard for 15 minutes and made you remember and really, and obviously things have changed, but this was going to be the feud for Stardom.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah, it's you can't help but look at it with a ping of disappointment that we didn't get to see the story unfold, but we got this match at least, and this match encompasses so much of what we were looking for and what we kind of needed. The only thing I would say for this, and like especially early Stardom Giulia, I look at, why doesn't she do the stealth viper more often? Like,
oh
that
my
is
god,
such a
I think
beautiful
about that all the
finishing
time.
move. Yeah,
she just brings it out for the 5-star.
Yeah, I love it's one of the most interesting and unique kind of looking submissions that looks brilliant. Looks painful, but it just looks really interesting as well. And when she locked it on here, like I knew it was a draw, and I knew they kind of saved by the bell situation, this situation. But it's just such a great looking move that like you see her lock it in and it's like, oh no. And this is after like both of them have hit big moves. Hana's locked the hydrangea in on her before. Giulia's hit Glorious Driver 1, I think it was. And then when she locks this in, you hear the bell going. It's kind of like oh, okay. Yeah, I'm glad for everyone's sake that the match has stopped because it's such a good looking submission move.
I just think like the crowd was sensational too. Like obviously, and maybe that's just like what made the match feel so energetic. They did it too back because them that brought the crowd up, but the crowd was just so red hot that night. It is one of the greatest events in Stardom history for a reason, and it's because of the final handful of matches. This was able to outshine, at least for me, a Arisa Ishiki title defense against a very capable challenger in Konami, and that match is really good, but it just isn't this. Now, Kagetsu Mayu, that's a different question. That's a different conversation. It's a different match, though.
Yeah, very different.
And that's what keeps this separated from everything else, especially during that time.
And that was the beauty of this time period with the wrestling was you started getting matches like this. It changes up the formula a bit. Risa versus Konami, this match, Maya versus Kagetsu, 3 different match types. And look, it definitely helps that the crowd just buy into it. But this is around the period where, like, honestly, this is the hottest the crowd's ever been in terms of just noise and vocal support. Obviously, they're getting more people now on average than they used to during this period. But this is right when Bushi Road really amped up the marketing. And the payoff was so immediate, both from just a pure number standpoint, but like an audible standpoint. It made like this stretch of matches, shows at Kurikan Hall, the December show here, then January, and then February. They feel just so special because the crowd are literally like, there's no space there. They're taking up every single seat, every single standing space. The second floor is just chockers. I'm sure there's people up there who cannot see anything because it's not designed to have a lot of people up there. But they're just so many people wanted to be a part of Stardom around this time and get in on arguably the ground floor of the next generation of Joshi wrestling. And despite the hiccup and the speed bump that was COVID, we've got it.
Yeah. And I'll just say this, my last thing about this match is this was going to be your All-Star Dream Cinderella main event. It was probably going to be your All-Star Grand Queendom main event. Like that's how much I really do believe in what these two are going to go on to do. Because while Tam Nakano may be your most popular wrestler now, I don't even know if she's in that spot. If things happen differently, obviously.
The door opened for her.
It did. The door opened for her and Giulia. Of course, they both lost their rivals, and that just changed everything. Tam lost to Risa, and Giulia lost Hana, and they ended up becoming each other's greatest rivals. And I think it's always so interesting just how history changed because of that. But if you haven't watched this match, it's free on YouTube. You can check that out. It's on the Stardom. It's very easy to find on Stardom YouTube channel. I believe it's is it the first episode of the We Are Stardom?
The We Are Stardom series, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that opened with that.
Yeah. You can also check it out at Stardom World, of course.
But the beauty is, like, normally we're recommending matches that are either on Stardom World or you kind of have to search the black market and talk to dodgy people in the alleyways just to get. This match, you don't have to be paying Stardom money. You just have to have an internet connection and the ability to go on YouTube.
Yeah, if you're looking for all the matches that we talked about, you could get the Kagetsu match on Stardom World. The Iwata match was on YouTube, so you just gotta Google search and you'll find it. I think it's called like Match of the Year. There's like Match in the Year in the title. I don't remember how I found it, but I did. I think Reddit was helpful.
It's unlisted, so it's not the easiest one to find.
Yeah, it's somewhere on Reddit you can help find, or ask one of us. We'll be happy to send it to you. You can check out the final 2 matches on Stardom World, or of course go check out Giulia and Hana on.
We'll give you the Iwata match, but you have to promise to rate this podcast 5 stars on whatever podcast app you're using.
Trust me, the match is worth it. That being said, we'll move on here. We'll talk a little bit about the latest Hana Kimura Memorial Show pinx that happened last week. Trent wasn't able to watch it yet. And this is the thing I think everyone has to know by now. You got to be in the right frame of mind to watch these shows, especially if you're not going to watch it live, right?
I was literally in the air when this match was happening, so I couldn't watch it. The Wi-Fi on Jetstar Airways is, well, it's non-existent, so I wasn't able to watch this bad boy live. And I haven't been able to watch it yet. I apologize because I don't like to come into these things ill-informed and ill-researched, but the reality is I'm not just going to chuck this on and casually watch. You kind of have to prepare, even though, it's not the same as the first year, which will just kick your ass from bell to bell in terms of raw emotion. But it's still, I can't just jump into a Hana Kimura Memorial Show just willy-nilly. I've got to mentally prepare myself. I've got to make sure I have boxes of tissues ready, maybe some comfort ice cream or chocolate.
As I read a few times, you'll be You'll be having a great time watching. The main event was Miyamoto and Iwata versus Aja Kong and Suri. You'll be watching Aja Kong dropping Iwata on her head and be like, "Yeah, this is great. This is great." And then Remember Me will come on from Coco, and you're like, "Why? Why did you do it to me?" And that's exactly what happened. But let's talk about it here. It was another great show produced by the one and only Kyoko Kimura. Once again, Booker of the Year. Congratulations. She just really does do a great job with these shows. And they always feel special, and they always have something unique to them, just as a wrestling show, let alone, the specialty. Obviously, if you tried to watch this on Fight Live, that was a absolute nightmare. But trust me, go back and watch Saori Inu and Miyuki Takase. It's worth your time. They had a very nice opener. They also had a battle royal, as they always do. Nothing to jump for joy there. I don't even think I ended up going back and watching it. You had Minoru Suzuki and Sakura Hirota dressed as Hana Kimura facing off. That was an absolute blast.
Was Minoru Suzuki dressed as Hana Kimura as well?
No. No, Minoru Suzuki was dressed as Minoru Suzuki. There was this great point where Hirota gets up to the top rope and she's going to do the Hana Kimura drop kick, but Suzuki's fighting with the referee and she's terrified and she's like trying not to fall while she waits, and it was just pure entertainment. Suzuki was a great choice. Obviously, she also tapped out when he went for the Gotch pile driver. So again, when you watch these shows, you can have a great time, and I think that's kind of where we're going with them. Obviously, the video montage at the end is going to destroy you every single time. This time was very sweet though, and I'll talk about that at the end because they were able to feature some pretty we had a different wrestler this time around to close it out. We had a fun little tag that I'm not going to talk about. It was fine. Asuka, Natsupoi Shuri versus Death Yamasan, Konami, and Rina. So the best part about this match is that before the show even started, Kyoko Kimura goes, Kaori Oniyama won't be able to compete in the match. And I go, sure.
Is she retiring again?
Oh, jeez. But as soon as the match starts, you're like, oh, and there she is. Rina, I think the point I want to say with this, in a match full of top level main event stars, obviously Oniyama's older now, but she was.
She can still go.
Rina didn't miss a beat. She absolutely belonged in there with all of them. She did a great job. And I will say, if there's anything that gets me emotional still in terms of the wrestling, it's going to be Rina showing up every single time. But she was happy to be there. She had her title with her. It was very cool. It was very special. Asuka is just like sensational. And I think everyone knows that by now. But seeing her with Natsupoi and Shuri, I was just sitting there. I was like, what just incredible star power. And I love that Shuri's able to, and I know Shuri's been on the show. She main evented last year with Asuka, but I just love that she's able to be on these shows.
Yeah.
Because she is debatably the biggest star in Joshi and has been for the past couple of years, and she's on these shows. I think that's
if Stardom really wanted to pull rank, Shuri's probably the person they would pull rank on because of how big a deal she is in Stardom. Like, especially last year when she was the World of Stardom champion.
Yeah.
Not that Stardom have definitely opened their doors a lot more in terms of working with other promotions and even going as far as to send them elsewhere. But you can understand them sending Arena and stuff like that, but Shuri's a bit of a different beast. So it is very much appreciated that them, and that's the point for that matter too, are still getting the chances to express their connection to Hana in this way.
Yeah, so this was really good. Go out of your way to see it. Can't stress that enough. It's absolutely worth your time. And then it was time for the main event, and the main event was fantastic, legitimate, like one of the best tag team matches I've seen this year. It was Aja Kong and Suri defeating Mika Iwata and Miyamoto. Miyamoto hit the German suplex on Aja Kong. How else do I need to sell you on this match? It was just so much fun. This was probably the best Aja Kong's looked in a very long time too, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to repeat what Aja Kong said because it destroyed me when I read it, but I have to because that's why we're talking about it. Let me get that up. But this continues the greatness of main events for these shows. Like every single main event for this show, one way or the other, is great. Which shouldn't come as a shock, but it was just the best. And I think that's kind of the way I walk away a lot of the time from these shows. So after the match, after Aja and Suri win, by the way, Suri and Miyamoto needs to happen. If it hasn't happened by the time you listen to this show, something went wrong. So Aja Kong says after, and there's no subtitles, so I'm not really spoiling anything for people if they haven't heard this. This is me helping you, so when you hear it, you can cry. It's raining today. Those are probably Hana's tears looking up. Hey, Hana, you weren't supposed to be crying today. And I read that. I go, and that was it. That was it from there. Because then we went right into Remember Me. And I was like, all right, that's it for me. Fun talk. Thanks, Aja. And then they go into the Remember Me montage, and everyone says pinx. And it closed out with obviously Kyoko Kimura, but the final guest appearance was none other than Mercedes Moné. So that was very cool. I think if everything were to go right, Mercedes Moné is on next year's show. I don't know. I just feel like she'd really want to. And she hasn't wrestled in Cork yet. I hope she gets to, because it seems like something she would happily do. She donated her Hana Kimura costume to them that was there on display, that she had worn at Battle in the Valley. So that was very cool as well. It was the final 3 non-Kyokos. It went Will Ospreay, Io Shirai, Kairi, Mercedes Moné. I was like, I mean, there you go. That tells you all you need to know. But wonderful show. Go watch it. It's on Fight TV. You can buy it and you'll have it forever. They did fix it after the fact, so you can go and watch it in full and not have any worries about skipping.
You're getting your value for money in that situation, because you'd hate to buy something and it not be right. And obviously for the live show, that's disappointing, but at least they went back and made sure that the archives are maintained.
Yeah. But now let's close out this show with talking about the legacy of Hana Kimura and what we see as her legacy. Obviously, we did this in our other series. We talked about the legacy of Arisa Shiki. Did we do it for Himeka? I think we did.
I think we touched on it, but it is a different situation, the circumstances, and
I promise we're going to do a series about a wrestler that didn't have to retire.
The problem is this kind of thing works best for people who have retired, because we could do one on Tam Nakano and then find, we've got to do another 3
episodes. The Tam road never ends, baby.
Yeah. And so, look, obviously we've picked a couple of roughies to start with in terms of the emotions. But, we'll be doing one on Kagetsu. And that will be a bit happier because that was a complete career.
7 parts. Yep. Don't even want to dream of the 3-dom. Those are going to be the longest parts, and I don't even want to think about them retiring either. So we're not going to do it anytime soon. But we will talk about the 3-dom. So Trent, I'll ask you, what it to you is Hana Kimura's legacy as we close out this series and move forward, celebrating her life year in and year out?
I think the best way to sort of bring it up is the fact that we're here 3 years later talking about a wrestler who wrestled for 4 or 5 years, who never won a major title, who only wrestled outside of Japan a couple of times and had a very short excursion in Mexico that basically no one saw unless you were in Mexico. The fact that, considering the time frame of her career and where it sort of reached, we're here 3 years later talking about her with such reverence, with such importance. And it's not just us. It's not just like there's a couple of people who were fanboys of her. We're creating this because A, we want to talk about it, but B, there's a demand to hear about it. because there are that many people who either went through her career like we did and know how special she was, how important she was, or people who are just discovering her and hearing what she was about and the kind of impact she had and wanting to learn more. It's one thing if you're talking about a wrestler who has a 20 plus year career, who wrestled all around the world, won world championships around the world. That's kind of, you'd expect this kind of reverence, but for someone to have the time that she had, it speaks to how special she was, B, the potential that was there and wasn't realized, and C, the kind of person she was. And of everything we talk about, that's the most important thing, what kind of person she was. You wouldn't be getting these kind of memorial shows if she wasn't such a lovable kindred spirit for so many people who impacted so many people's lives. You just wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get wrestlers from around the scene making the effort to come to these shows. You wouldn't have fans going out of their way to watch these kind of events and remember her if she wasn't such a special person. Hana has touched so many people's lives just by being her. And, every year when it comes to the anniversary of her passing, as painful as it can be to talk about it, I want to talk about it, being in podcasts, being in written articles, because as painful as the memory of her death is, the joy that I get remembering who she was as a person, as a wrestler, as a performer, is that much greater. And it's that much important to keep that spirit alive because everyone is different. Everyone is special.
I wish I went first because I'm not sure I could follow that. But perfectly said, obviously. And I think it's exactly how I kind of think of it. The fact we're sitting here talking about her, and we'll all be sitting here talking about her next year and the year after that and the year after that. It's very, it's very telling of who she was and who she forever will be. I wrote an article within the past 2 weeks that I didn't expect to write. I literally said on the last episode, I don't write. I'm not. This is it. This is all I'm doing for Hana Kimura content. And that changed because I was just doing some research. Maybe it was for this show. I think I was editing an article too, and it was about Hana. And I was just looking for a photo. I was doing simple, looking for a photo to make the cover photo. And the reality is, when you look up Hana Kimura, the beauty of who Hana Kimura was isn't what you get to see instantly when you Google her name. It's sadly that final day. That is what you see. And I was sad. I was angry. I was all up in my feelings. And I said to myself, and it ultimately was probably the worst I've felt talking or thinking or anything since maybe Matinee, truthfully. I was just upset. I was upset. It was 3 a.m. and I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And the fact is that the more I thought about it, and the reason I wrote is because she is everything someone should want to be in their life. You should want to include other people no matter what. Look at them. Look at everyone the same. Give everyone a chance. Be happy. Light up the room anytime you walk into it. Be, not on purpose, be the center of attention, but just be such a bright light that you are. She was the very best of us all and still is to this day. And while her legacy will unfortunately be her final day, I think collectively will all make sure that that's not the legacy that the Joshi world, the wrestling world remembers her as. That's why these Hana Kimura Memorial shows are so important on a yearly basis. It's why this podcast to me is so important on a yearly basis. I've done a podcast of some form yearly since her passing. The first 2 years we're talking to her fans and just thinking of the bright, fun moments. I told the story about how at that New York show she was, in line talking to everyone, giving everyone the time, speaking English, and then when everyone was getting ready to leave, she was working it and hey, come over here, and she obviously benefits to get the money from that, but she's giving the time to everyone. She's willing to make you feel included and give you a moment of her time because she wants to know you. And I think that's something that really defined who she was more than what she did in a wrestling ring, what her final day was. That's who she was at the very core. That's what we should always remember. Her legacy is kindness. Her legacy is brightness, friendliness. That special saying, everyone's different, everyone's special. That is a motto she lived by. And I think we should all do our best to live by such a thing. In a world that we live in today where I feel like so many people disagree more than they agree a lot of the time, you look at someone like Hana Kimura, and I think you can learn a lot from the way she lived. And that's, to me, her legacy. Her legacy is the light that will live on. She is going to be someone that makes an impact years after we're gone. And that's the beauty of who she was. 22 years on this earth, but she and her legacy will go far beyond that. And I think that's very important. So to me, her legacy is all that and so much more. And I hope everyone that listened to this, I hope everyone that watches the memorial shows, I hope everyone that loves who she was, watches her matches, watches her promos, just sees a photo online, sees, scrolls up and down Twitter and sees her in her badass gear one way or the other, whether it's a Wado tie or Tokyo Cyber Squad, or maybe it's the cheerleader. You see her and you smile because that's what she would want you to do. And I think that's very important. Obviously, it's been hard. We're recording this 3 years later. It's never going to be easier. And I think everyone also needs to know that you're allowed to grieve as long as you need to. I think that's something that can be forgotten a lot too. But just remember that her brightness, her friendliness, who she was is why the wrestling world and the world itself is a better place because Hana Kimura lived on it. So guess gotta wrap the show up now.
It's not the easiest situation to wrap up.
I thankfully I was able to write all those words down when I was.
That was smart. I should have done that.
No, not this.
Oh, right.
I meant the article I wrote.
Of course.
Thankfully, I did that first because I was a sobbing mess when I did that. I was gone. Like I didn't write any words down for this. This was just kind of taking a little bit of that. I literally titled Hana Kimura is the very best of us all or something like that.
Yeah.
Is specifically. Not was, is, because she forever is. And it'll never get easier. But I will say that our next episode will be looking at, to bring up the middle of it, it will be looking at the double champion, the first double champion, Mayu Iwatani.
Not only double champion.
Not anymore. No. We will look at Mayu Iwatani and what she accomplished as World and Wonder Stardom champion as the first ever. We'll look at that match with Io Shirai and her winning the title, obviously, and the reign that followed. Of course, with Tam Nakano now as the second ever and reigning as we go on. So make sure to check that out when we come back. And then after that, who knows? We'll see when we get there. But thank you everyone for listening. Trent, do you have anything to plug before we go home?
Well, I guess like I'm going to plug the upcoming Ocean Cyclone show episode that you and myself, you being you, Scott, not you, the fans. Maybe the fans were there as well, stalking us. But Scott, myself, and Ryan recorded. That's coming out this week, and it was an incredibly fun episode to do. Very chaotic, but that's what the Ocean Cyclone show is all about. I'd also like to plug, just speaking on Hana Kimura. You did mention it, Scott, but specifically Scott's podcast series from last year, where you talk to all of the fans and stuff. Like, if you want a complete kind of understanding of Hana Kimura, obviously we've tried to do our best here as just two people, but there's a lot that you can take from that podcast. That like 4 hours or something. Obviously, it's a big one. Commit yourself to, maybe break it up a bit. But so many people gave their honest thoughts and impressions and feelings towards Hana. And I would definitely encourage anyone to go and find that, because that's a very special piece. Scott put a lot of effort into that, and I definitely think he deserves that sort of getting another up through and listen to. So please go check that out if you have the time.
Yes, thank you. That is on. It's for free on the Fight Game Media Network Patreon. If you want to go find that, it is for free. You just got to type in Hana Kimura. You might get the pinx episode and the Memorial Show from last year, Bagas review shows, but that is up for free on there. I think I'm going to try to get it up to YouTube soon so that people can find it a little bit easier. But thank you.
Or
so
just
much.
bug Scott for the link.
Yeah, that too. I have it. I took a while to find it the other day, but I have it. If you want to check out the article that I wrote about Hana Kimura, that's on WrestlePurist.com. Don't know if they have any other articles about Hana Kimura, so you could probably just find it pretty quickly. I also don't do commentary for Stardom, and otherwise, we'll get on out of here.
Hey, maybe when people are listening to this, you are on the commentary booth. Maybe they're doing English commentary every week, and
that'd be pretty cool.
Scott E. Is,
listen. Pay me $5 per show, and I will do it every single show. I'm gonna eat. You don't even have to pay me. Just pay for my board and room,
and flights. Just get that one.
That's true. That's true. If you want to find me in once a month, that's fine too. But thank you everyone for listening. I hope this 3-part series gave you a chance to celebrate Hana Kimura. We try our best to keep it all positive, but it's hard sometimes because you just get sad thinking of what if or what could have been. But we do know that what she accomplished. Go watch those 4 matches. You're gonna see every bit of why she was so special. And yeah, there's many other matches to watch too. There's an entire catalog in Stardom World. Even like the most random match. Just go under there, click a match that has Hana in it. You'll have a great time.
Yeah, if it's an Oedo Tai multi-person tag match or a Tokyo Cyber Squad multi-person tag match, it's going to be good fun. Especially check out, I know we didn't talk about it, just for the pure chaos and fun of it all, one of the Golden Week shows, it was Oedo Tai, I think, versus Tokyo Cyber Squad in wasn't a ladder match, but they were hanging something from the ceiling kind of thing, and it was almost looked like an Ultimate X match, and they had to retrieve it. That was so much fun. Go find that one.
Just go watch like all of the TCS stuff if you wanna have a smile on your face. But thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back next time. So until then, see ya.
Ring Post Radio is the only show hosted by Ryan Knightsey and Scotty Edwards that talks about the entire world of professional wrestling. With new episodes coming out every Sunday, there is absolutely no reason to not listen to real, honest wrestling opinions from 2 crazy maniacs. Have a hot boy summer and listen along to Ring Post Radio every Sunday on the Countout Network. This has been a Countout Podcast.